Hi, everyone, and welcome to the session called What Open Source Taught Us About Business. Uh, just like Jamal said, my name is Maciej Oczko, and I'm the CTO at Polidea, a Poland-based development studio. And I'm doing this talk along with Karolina Rosol, a project manager also at Polidea, who will take over later on. Before I jump into the subject, let me just say that I'm very excited to be a part of this amazing event. It's a real pleasure for me to experience such a vibrant community that you all create. Okay, so what open source taught us about business? Well, firstly, I'd like to tell you why does it even matter? Why is it so important to know the business more and to be better at it? And to answer those questions, I'm going to share with you our story, which hopefully will inspire you and maybe it will contribute something to the community. All right, let's start. I believe that, and I hope that you agree, that business is much more than just making money. Just like the Apache way states, community over code, meaning that open source is all about the people, so is the business. It simply cannot be reduced only to profit, right? The human factor there is absolutely crucial. And I hope that you agree that doing business is also about things like hard work, building relations with other people, helping them, transferring knowledge, making new products, and so on and so on. Ultimately, it seems that it's about making a difference, generating some positive change. It could be within a company or a local community, or even, as in your case, the whole world. And this introduction brings me to the small Warsaw-based company, my homeland, Polidea. We are a digital studio, which is a smart term that essentially boils down to, the positive group of people that love to write some code and to build good software. Now we are about 75 people, but 9 years ago, there were only a bunch of us. And back then, we were lucky enough to think about business also in terms of the local developer community. And we had founded a local meetup called Mobile Warsaw. I think that the name tells it all because, it was about mobile, which back then was still in its early days, and it was in Warsaw, right? But there we go with our first lessons. We had to learn for the first time how to collaborate with other people, right? How to organize the events, how to efficiently build new relations, and how to patiently look after, right, this small new community. And it was so cool. We've met a lot of great people, great developers that were keen to share their knowledge, their experiences, the challenges they were facing. Frankly speaking, it only increased our appetite for more. So later on, for a few years in a row, we've organized a conference called MCE. So initially, it was an acronym for Mobile Central Europe. But again, this is very straightforward. It was mainly not only about mobile, and it was placed in Central Europe, Warsaw, right? And by the way, the founder of this initiative is here today with us, I hope. And you may know him. He is a member of Apache Airflow PMC, Jarek Potiuk. And this conference, the second endeavor, was even more challenging, as you may imagine, than a local meetup, because we were organizing an event at a global scale, right? but it was really, really rewarding. We had a chance to meet world-class developers and learn from them. It also enabled us to build long-term relationships, and some of them translated into real projects. And this conference was a great platform for people for sharing their experiences and for networking, just like this one. And it was awesome. It was great. Okay. I'm talking about our Meetup conference, our community-driven initiatives, because they were really important for us. Thanks to them, we realized that we love to work with our other people, to share knowledge and to support this sharing somehow. And those activities led us to the open source. Our journey with open source started in 2016. Yes, 2016. And when we saw that we are good in a particular area of engineering where there were no good resources online. So we released our very first Bluetooth Low Energy library for Android to the public. Very soon we released the iOS one, later the React Native version saw the daylight, and recently the Flutter one. Those were our very first attempts at writing code publicly. And, communities around those libraries are tiny because BLE is a niche. But still, we have learned that we have to take care of our developers because, they're most important end users. We needed to keep development and maintenance rolling, talk to developers, help them with their issues, and most importantly, listen to their feedback carefully, right? And all that never ends. It is a constant journey, but it seems that since the very beginning, our own little open source is doing quite well. And finally, we've entered the wide waters of open source in 2018 with our contributions to Apache Beam, which is a unified model for batch and stream data processing, as you might know, and Apache Airflow, of course. And we had to learn a completely new way of working. First of all, there was no end user as we'd known so far, meaning no customer that literally used our application in their hands, right? We haven't had the power to solely decide about tech stack or the way we're going to implement certain features. We had limited influence at the beginning of the time frame that we desired our work to be in master branch, right? We had to learn how to write proposals, how to communicate with other developers through dev lists, GitHub issues, and discussions there. And we had to learn how this community, how your community behaves, to know the values. I think that ultimately we had to somehow embrace the Apache way, so to speak. And I must say that this journey was only but beneficial of us. We met fantastic people along the way. We landed here, right? We love this work. And a few of us became committers in both projects. And today in Airflow, we have 3 PMC members. And this is absolutely mind-blowing. This is awesome. I'm very proud of it. What is important is that over the years, we noticed that what a powerful force the open source movement is in the industry. It has a new kind of influence that was non-existent before. And this is something that we used to call code leadership. We think that code leadership is a new quality of leadership that is connected with this influence. but not through written or verbal words, rather by writing some meaningful code, open source code, and communities, and engaging into communities that creates it. Honestly, the code leadership term is not our own. We haven't coined it ourselves. So let me share you a short story of how this term code leadership has been born. So imagine once our CEO was in a meeting, in a business meeting, with one of our potential clients, and it was a meeting like any other. They were discussing usual stuff like possible projects, their needs, our skill set, and so on. And while talking about open source, our open source initiatives and engagements, the client summed them up by saying, this is code leadership. And it was nice, it was flattering, but it struck us at the same time. What does it mean, code leadership, right? What could it mean? So after some thinking, we redefined it, and we've incorporated the slogan into our mindset. Like I said earlier, it's about building and strengthening the communities by, for example, mentoring, teaching, and promoting the best practices, and most importantly, standing behind those core open source values. And ultimately, I think that it's about making a positive change with open source code. I think it's really inspiring, and I love to see more companies leaning towards this trend. And even more, I think that you, the contributors, you are code leaders, and I'm really grateful for this. And I'd love you to feel like ones, at least for a moment right now. So yeah, this is quite interesting for us, and really important. Okay, now I'm getting back on track and moving to the one of the most difficult challenges we had to face when we entered the wide waters of open source, particularly when we contributed to the open source commercially. And this challenge is about delivering software in a reasonable time frame, and it is called project management. Why is it so hard? Why do we even need project management in open source projects? That sounds a little bit ridiculous, right? And to answer those questions, I'd like to pass the voice to the most competent person I know in this area, my friend and coworker, Karolina Rosol. Karolina, the stage is yours.
Okay, hi everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you, Maciej, for a beautiful introduction as well as your speech. So before I start my presentation, I would like to congratulate my colleagues and coworkers for being invited to Apache Airflow PMC members, Tomek Urbaszek and Kamil Bregua, as well as other colleagues from the Apache Airflow community, and that is Daniel Imberman, and recently also a new committer, King Pinko. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly. So getting back to the subject, this sounds ridiculous. So the question that you can see on your screen. So what does PM do in the open source related project? So this was actually the question that I asked myself when I firstly joined the open source related projects. And I felt like the bag in the center of this circle of cats. So on the one hand, at Polydia, I encountered a client who actually had a product that used some kind of open source tools like Apache Beam and Apache Airflow. And at the same time, there was an internal team of developers who at the first sight were not fully convinced about having a project manager helping them in back then self-organizing projects. So this is what I would like to talk about. So about my experiences in connecting these three stakeholders, and how it started and how it ended, and of course what I have learned and what my colleagues learned from open source community and how it looked like. So when I joined Polydia, my knowledge about open source projects was actually non-existent. So I learned everything from my colleagues and of course from the community. So there were many things that I had to learn, like starting from enrolling to the dev list, or knowing that a community is important, that other things are important, that our client is important. So it was pretty a lot for me. And what I encountered when I first joined the project was something that we used to call a creative chaos. So the things were working, everyone was happy, but no one actually knew why was that. So that was the kind of state that I met when I joined. And the attitude that I saw among my colleagues was that they basically were focused only on work, and the whole attitude was really solitary. So this means, a little bit not so much fun while working. And in terms of some processes, there was no progress visibility. So they didn't have enough tools to monitor stuff like that. There was no clear roadmap. I mean, there was a common goal and there was a community needs, but still it wasn't enough. And of course, because there was no project manager, someone from the team had to communicate with the client, to take care of making notes, take care of the things on a daily basis, like money, budget, milestones from the client. And it was hard because I believe that most of engineers wanted to do some fun, and that means coding. But it was not possible for everyone back then. And in terms of responsibility, the situation was more like everyone was responsible for everything, and that means that no one is responsible for nothing. So in that moment I came and I would like to tell you what I brought to the table. So I didn't mention that at Polydia teams, we really love cats, like really much. So I think that you have seen it or came to this conclusion based on my presentation. So of course I brought a new team member, especially now when we are closed in our homes, and this is my cat. And then, of course, from some more serious stuff, the communication with the client landed on my shoulders. And so no one from the team has to deal with formalities, contracts, milestones, and budgets. And there is more visible progress at the moment. So we have certain tools and spreadsheets. I know that everyone loves them. And of course, we have our monthly milestones. And when it comes to processes, so I just want to tackle it one more time, because when I joined the team, I was like, okay, let's do agile, let's do sprints. Everyone does it. I did it in the past. It's amazing. And let's try it out also in open source related projects like at Polidea. No way. So we had a lot of discussions, we have a lot of arguments, and after quite some time, we actually decided to make a hybrid. And so at the moment, we work in a kind of Kanban / Scrum methodology. So we have our weekly cycles, but actually we prefer to look at our goals when it comes to monthly milestones. And the last thing that is my favorite is team building. So I hope that I brought a lot of fun. And if you know me, then you also know that I tend to tell terrible jokes, like really the dead jokes once, but yeah. Okay, so I would like to show you how it's done at Polidea. And as you can see, we have our formal sprint meetings, like retrospective sessions. This one is my favorite one. I hope you guys won't feel offended because the theme of this retrospective was wellness and well-being. So I decided to relax them a little bit. But we also do some more powerful stuff like go-karts racing with other teams. And of course, what I observed was that there is not enough recognition within the teams. So I came up with this idea of making like the Kudos jars. Yeah, I know this is an old logotype of Apache Airflow, but it's old. So we just put a kind of sticky notes inside of it and to thank someone from the team for the things that they did to us. And we were opening them every Monday. But now we actually do it on online retrospective sessions so that it's more ecological. And of course, we love food, and I also take care of food and sweets sometimes to make someone's day brighter, and the team building, and of course, some weird stuff. It's a Python, because of Apache Airflow, and it's one of our colleagues. And of course, we have unforgettable stand-up meetings. No, they don't always look like that, but sometimes we have crazy ideas. Yeah, and this sums up what I have just told. So, yeah. Now to some more serious stuff and more bullet point knowledge for you guys. So you probably want to know what actually we learned about this business, about open source, to come to a conclusion. So before my talk today, I carried out a survey among the teams I cooperate with. And now I would like to show you some of their responses. So the first question in the survey was, what has changed after you had joined the open source project? So the most common replies was like that the open source projects related to business clients at Polydia changed someone's view of the open source projects. So apparently they were, the open source projects were seen like super exclusive ones to a certain group of people, but Apache Airflow or Apache Beam showed us that it's for everyone and that everyone can make an impact on the project and on the product of our clients. Apart from that, some of us became more relaxed because they felt a lot of support from the community and from the peers among the team. And also some maybe a little bit more bitter conclusion is that not all revolutions are possible, even if they have a positive influence, but you still can discuss about them and have support within the community. Another question that I asked is, what are the things that you learned from an open source community? So first of all, it's totally visible that there is plenty of people who put like their whole hearts into the open source projects, and it's amazing. Also, what I personally think is great is that open source project also improves people's communication skills, and that it's very important. And of course, relating to code leadership that Maciej mentioned, is that it's really important to produce quality code. And there is always a saying, a sentence in Apache that there is community over code. So it's also something that we learned from the community. And I did my little observations as well. Like most of my colleagues know that I did some experiments. So I prepared my personal list of the attributes of the open source project and what makes it so great. So first of all is freedom. And it's not only about freedom of your ideas, but it's also freedom of speech, of sharing your skill set, your personality with other people and not being judged for that. And I find it wonderful. Also, there is ownership. Ownership meaning that if you have an idea, you have to take ownership for what you have proposed and pursue it till the end. And it's really important, especially if you start your journey also as a programmer, as a student, even as a project manager. You can easily go and see how it's done in the open source project. Then we have recognition. So the greener your GitHub is, the better. And of course, it's always recognized within the dev list or community in general. Other things that I found great and that I observed are mutual support and mentorship. So I also encountered it, and I seen it from my colleagues when they explained to me how it's done in the community. They always were willing to show me how to create my first PR. Yeah, I did one. And this is amazing. I think that Apache Airflow and Apache Beam are one of the most welcoming and supportive communities. And of course, last thing is diversity. So I saw that even if you are not an engineer, you can still have impact, you can still be a committer, and you can still be a PMC member. And for that, I want to thank someone, but I will do it at the end of my presentation. Okay, and about project management. So I told you that most of the guys were not convinced about having a project manager in the open source related projects at Polidea, but they did leave some nice words about what has changed. So first of all, our creative chaos became a little more visible and less chaotic. And that the relations between the peers got better, and that I was not like a type of person that only looks at spreadsheets, but I was truly engaged and personal. And now it's better, apparently, that we can prioritize stuff. And it's not only about prioritizing stuff of our clients, but also of community. And this is what I try to connect on a daily basis. And some other personal thoughts of myself that I learned from the open source community is that it's really amazing how you guys communicate. So I think that most managers, not only project managers, but just in general, people who manage teams, people would have to see that how you communicate, and that everyone is distributed, everyone is somewhere in the world, but still there is a way to do something together, to create common goals, to meet yourself on meetups, on Airflow Summit, and stuff like that. So it's amazing. Also, I proved myself that the best thing you can do about the people you work with or you manage is to invest in their individual traits. So not tell them like, oh no, you do this thing so bad and this thing so bad, but just see what they do good and what they can actually show to the world that will bring impact or make even your business grow. I think that's the way of how it's done. And yeah, speaking of project managers, I also saw that Scrum/Kanban is possible, and it's also an option, so it doesn't have to be only one methodology, and it's fine. Also, I think that sometimes it's really hard for the managers to listen to their people and to trust them. And community made me realize that it's always better to like wait and don't push, but listen to your people and their ideas and how they will do it. Because in the end, you hire smarter people not to tell them what to do, but to actually get their ideas and see how your business grows. And the last thing is that I was able to host and co-organize Apache Airflow Meetup and Apache Beam Meetup. And this was a great experience. It was really hard at the beginning. We were super nervous. Firstly, I ordered like 70 pizzas because I was afraid that people would get so hungry, and then all Polydians had to eat them for breakfast the day after. So yeah, that was the day. Okay. And all right, so this will be quite an end of my presentation. So to sum up, I would like to thank all of the guys that you can see on the screen. The Airflow team, the Beam team, and the people who are involved in open source projects. Anyhow, you guys are amazing. I am really thrilled that I can work with you on a daily basis, learn from you, and have fun with you. It's really great, and for me, it's superb that I can see you blossom thanks to community and getting your dreams come true. But I would like to give special thanks also to our moderator today, to Aijamal and her colleague Griselda Cuevas, because they really supported us in terms of sharing open source community mindset, and also supported us financially in terms of Apache Airflow and Apache Beam meetups. And they were always there. They're rocket people. Like, really, I can recommend anyone to cooperate with them. Plus, I'm sure that Matthias probably is not watching me now, but he was also a big help in terms of cooperating on the Apache Beam meetup. And in terms of Beam, maybe you want to go to another summit, and it'll take place on August 24th to 28th. It's also fully digital, free. So I encourage you to go there. I was there like a year ago in Berlin live. It was amazing. And this year, I think that it'll be as greatly organized as Apache Airflow Summit. Yeah. So in the name of Maciej, Oczko, my colleague and coworker, and myself, thank you very much for listening. And yeah, have a nice day, afternoon, or good night, wherever you are. You're muted. Yes.
I am so sorry. It happens all the time. But anyway, I was saying thank you, Karolina and Maciej, so much for your presentation, full of cat gifs and full of shout outs to people that I know and people that I admire. And let's see if we have any questions for Maciej and Karolina. So there's one question. Is the role focus of a project management office different in a traditional IT services company than in open source focused company? If so, how does it change?
So I would say that it's slightly different. So depending on your way of digging deeper into open source world, so you can still be a good project manager of the open source related projects and don't involve yourself in the open source community, and it's still fine. But in our case, I think it's inevitable not to be engaged in the open source community, because you have to be there. You have to have a sip of this culture of what's going on the dev list, go to some meetups and stuff like that in order to firstly understand your people, then to understand your project better, and to foresee your goals and milestones. So I know that it's not a clear answer to that, but it's not very traditional role. I would say that this is something like connected with project management and people management, something like this.
So maybe a similarity here is like in traditional IT project, the best project manager is one that actually engages into the product, right? Mm-hmm. That he or she understands it, tries to use it, right, and tries to feel it in order to better know the customer and the product at the end, and ultimately better manage the project, right? The milestones and so on. So is like what Karolina said. This is a similarity in open source project, that you have to be, if you want to really flourish and blossom like Karolina, you have to really be engaged there and be there, listen to people, not only to your team, but also to the people that your team work with, right?
Yeah, I can add to that as well. Like I agree with Maciej and Karolina, both of you. Like it's project, like managing projects within the company seems like hoarding cats, because you have to talk to all these engineers who want to work on their own stuff and do their own work. But then when it comes to open source, it's hoarding more cat. It's like it takes longer. You have to engage like in different mailing lists, in different like avenues, like not only in company email, but like whatever the open source uses. It can be Slack, it can be dev list, it can be some discourse or whatever. And yeah, it's but it's more fun, I would say, because you end up making lots of great friends from around the world, and you can travel for conferences together, and it's really awesome. So any more questions? I think that's it for us, and thank you so much again for. Okay, there's another one. Okay, what percentage of time do developers spend on working on client projects versus contributing to open source? How do you balance that?
So I won't tell you about percentage because it's in our case, it's actually strictly connected to each other. So there is no such thing as like dividing it into percentage for the open source or for the client, because these two things are connected. So that's the way we do it, and our clients are aware of the fact that, of course, we contribute to the open source community. So it's a part of the contract. So basically, yeah, maybe Maciej, you can add something to that.
Yes, I mean, thank you for the question. This is a very good question. As Karolina says, in those Airflow and Beam projects, this is connected. However, we do some contributions to our open source, which is not like commercial, right? Per se, it's not like we're not making money out of it. So we simply put and invest some time of our developers and give them some freedom to contribute to those projects. Just this is as simple as that. Of course, we have to be careful about it, and we don't have like we can like spend the whole week doing open source, but still there is some dedicated time, especially for the people we call maintainers, the people who it's like your committers, let's say, who are especially owning the given library. So yeah, they do have a dedicated time, and it's great. And yeah, this is the answer.